To me, he was the epitome of what a public servant is. Not a politician, but a public servant. Someone who thought generations down the road and said, if we do this policy today, it'll mean this much to our children and to their children and to their children. And that was the way he thought. And that's the important thing. So his legacy lives on. The bottle bill, all the acts that he signed related to protecting particular kinds of lands in Michigan. The money for the Clean Water Act that built the wastewater treatment systems in Michigan. Those legacies stay on today. They're still with us. They're still providing opportunity and assistance to our generation as well as the generation to come after. So thinking long term is don't think about today, think about tomorrow.
William G. Milliken, Michigan's longest-serving governor, was known for his environmental stewardship and civility in politics. During his tenure in office, from 1969 until 1983, Milliken lent critical support for Michigan's beverage container deposit law, expanded state funding for recreation and parks programs in Detroit, and signed the state's landmark Environmental Protection Act, as well as laws to protect sand dunes, control hazardous waste, and promote recycling. Milliken passed away in October 2019 in his native and beloved Traverse City. He was preceded by his wife Helen, herself a champion of environmental stewardship and the women's rights movement. A memorial service in celebration of Governor Milliken will be held on August 6 at the Interlochen Center for the Arts. In anticipation of the event, Flow is publishing a series of short video interviews with those who knew the governor and Helen well. Look for those videos in the coming days.
My name is Bill Rustem. I went to work for him as an intern in 1970, and then worked with him from then until he left office in 1982, either in the governor's office. I took a leave of absence to do a bottle bill, getting signatures and then getting it passed on the ballot. So I worked for him for a long time, and after he left the governor's office, I went to Chicago with him to set up an organization called the Center for the Great Lakes. So I really worked for him for about 14 years. All you got to do is look at our roads versus the roads when you drive in any other state that doesn't have a bottle bill, and the importance quickly becomes apparent to you. The key roles were played by the governor, by the Michigan United Conservation Clubs, and by the Michigan Farm Bureau. Mm-hmm. Those were the three groups that really pushed to get the thing on the ballot and passed. Petitions were put in every MUCC magazine. Petitions were put in every farm news from the Farm Bureau. That's how we got it done, and it was one little story. One thing that helped us. One union leader once said, "Only nuts are supporting this bill," and the reporter asked, "Well, are you saying the governor is nuts then?" Because he was the one who signed the very first petition to put the bill on the ballot, and that helped because it engendered some interest in the bill. And engendered some interest in the petition drive, and we ultimately were able to collect 420,000 signatures, got it on the ballot. It passed by a 63 to 37% margin. It's one of many things he did in terms of the environment. However, I mean, you can go back to when he was lieutenant governor, and he helped lead the effort to get two important bond issues passed. One to create funds for clean water, cleaning up our waters, Great Lakes and inland lakes and streams, and another bond for the state parks. That's back when he was lieutenant governor. When he was governor, he pushed bills to protect wetlands, to protect sand dunes, to protect inland lakes and streams, to protect wilderness areas, to protect farmland, just on and on and on. There's a whole series of public acts on the books that are still in effect today, are protecting those kinds of lands. It took the governor and Mrs. Milliken up to a state park up in the Upper Peninsula. The parks director at the time wanted to make that like every other state park. We had campgrounds and all these amenities, bathrooms, nice bathrooms, et cetera, and we didn't like that idea. And once the governor and Mrs. Milliken saw the place, which had been donated to the state of Michigan in part by the Miller of Miller Brewing Company. He had owned it. It's a series of 7 lakes up there. And they saw it and said, no, this needs to be a wilderness area. It needs to be walk-in, it needs to be motorless, and that's the way it is today. It's one of the very special places in Michigan. One of the other big issues was the creation of at the time was called the Kammer Land Trust Fund. And that came out of a great compromise, The issue was whether or not drilling for oil and gas was going to be allowed in the Pigeon River country, a big wild area in the northeastern part of the Lower Peninsula, all owned by the state, and whether oil and gas drilling was going to occur in that area. Of course, you had people saying absolutely not, and others saying absolutely you need to because we need the gas and oil. Well, he, along with Tom Washington of MUCC, were able to forge a compromise that ultimately said, okay, we'll allow limited drilling, but we'll take the dollars that come from the investment in the state's resource, since we're pulling the state's, all the public's oil and gas out of that land owned by the public, and we'll reinvest that in new lands and new recreational opportunities for Michigan. And it still lives today. Natural Resource Trust Fund every year makes grants to the state and to local units of government to protect land and to provide recreational opportunity for people. So it's taking, again, that long-term view, which is what he always took. We're in a staff meeting and somebody started talking about the politics of an issue, and he turned to that staff person and said, look, he said, good policy is good politics. And that's the way he looked at the world. It wasn't just thinking about the politics of anything. It was, you make the right choice, adopt good policy, push good policy, and that will help you and the state in the long run. And that's the way he looked at everything. I wish we could return to the day when people could work together. It's so much more effective, and you get so much more done when people are willing to sit down, as he was, with the other party and reach a compromise and reach a conclusion to an issue. We're in an age now of shouting and blaming, and that's unfortunate. It doesn't work. It doesn't help the public. It doesn't help the environment. It doesn't help public health. It doesn't help anything. This age that we're in today has got to stop, and people can learn from the way it used to be and look at some of the politicians of the past and say, okay, here's how things ought to be done, and learn from that legacy.